Hi guys, it is Stacey Calder from the Business Success Network podcast, and I am delighted to be joined today by my good friend David Heffernan. And he is one of our business success experts. You are in for a treat. He always leaves me kind of mind blown, but thoughtful and with a lot of gratitude, actually. So, David, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you. I'm just saying there, the OCD people are going to lose a nut with that wonky picture in the background.
So if you're watching on YouTube, you will see that there is a picture on the back there. We were having some fun in the green room, weren't we? Because we were trying to get it straight and it just wasn't happening. If you are listening on Spotify or other platforms, you won't know what we're talking about. But Dave has a great picture just above his head, a caricature actually. So David, tell us what you've been up to and tell people, why are you here? Why are you on the podcast?
Right, well, I'm here because Anna Fox Neal told me to do it, which is always good. But I'm here, there's a lady that we know, who we both know, called Elena. And she said, I bring people out of darkness into light. And I think by sharing my story and sharing what I've been through and how I've overcome it and how I deal with things, I think that helps people. As you say, gratitude, it brings people with gratitude. It brings people into a mindset. You know what? As Brad says, there's always a worse before date. You know what I mean? And too many people say, you know what? Don't look back. We're not going there. But I'm a great believer that we need to really focus and understand our past. Find what the positives are, because I guarantee in every situation we find ourselves in, there is a positive and there's a learning curve. And if we can look back at our past and actually see the positives, see the learning curves, and just disregard the stuff that doesn't serve us, our life going forward is so much easier and so much better to live. So that's why I'm here, to hopefully spread some joy and cheer.
Joy and cheer. Now, you work a lot within the mental health industry. You are our business success expert when it comes to all things mental health, whether that's in the workplace, whether that is family life. And I personally know that you've met I was going to say my youngest. He's not my youngest anymore. He's the middle child, Billy. You've sat with him, and I've experienced the David Heff, the man himself, helping my son to just overcome some confidence issues, some not quite feeling right in himself, and it was fantastic to witness. So what you do is just amazing, and like I said, I'm always grateful for people like you, because you really give back to the world. And we were just talking in the green room about oxygen masks, actually. Now, if we're talking about your oxygen mask, you've got to put your own on first, and you have been through your own trials and tribulations and kind of thing. So is that why you went into working with mental health? What is it that, was there a time in your life that you just went, do you know what, this is what I want to do?
I would say the point where I thought this is what I want to do is at the age of 14. I grew up in an extremely rough council estate in Salford, and I was becoming to get a moral compass around me. I was seeing so many kids with the wrong role models. You had Uncle Bob, who was the thief or the drug dealer or the gangster or whatever. And I just wanted to create a safe space for these kids to go where just for a few hours a night they could be themselves. They could just do their own thing and just be able to just breathe. And quite funny, actually, because I got a message from a school in Portsmouth yesterday asking me to go and speak to year 10s about the next steps. And that was around the age that I was where this epiphany came. And I wanted to create a childcare club at 14, just to give these kids a safe space. And my dad would say to me, he said, no, he said, it's not happening. He said, you're going to become an accountant. And he wanted me to become an accountant. So for several years, up until the age of 16, we used to scream at each other because I was adamant, this is what I want to do. And my dad was saying, no, you're going to become an accountant, you're good at maths, and we want to get you out of Salford into London, into a better place. And he saw being a better person, somebody in a suit with a good job and good money and what have you. And I saw a good person as somebody who actually stays in the area and tries to make that a better place to live. So we had totally different ideas. And he was coming from a place of love, so I don't hate him for that. He was coming from what he believed from his own conditioning was the best thing for me. And so at 16, I was thrown out and I was made homeless. And for 2 years, I lived above drug dealers' squats. I lived in a cemetery for 3 months. And during this time, I set about trying to get funding for this childcare club. I had no plan B. This was all I had. And I was losing weight. I was seriously malnourished. I was in a really bad way. And I was just getting no after no after no after no. And eventually, I met somebody at Salford Council who asked me if I had a business plan. And I said, I have no idea what you're talking about. I said, I've just got passion. I just got my why. I just want to get it done. And he took me to the side, and for about a month, he drew up this business plan, this marketing strategy, and he helped me go back to the same businesses with renewed sort of understanding of what I wanted to achieve and why I wanted to achieve it with a business model. And I got enough funding to get the childcare centre up and running, which was amazing. I passed the keys on to the council, and within a month they ran it into the ground and it closed. You know, they didn't have my passion, they didn't have my why. But at that time, I ended up in hospital. I ended up swallowing my tongue, and I was seriously malnourished, and I was in a really bad way. I was on a drip. And I remember thinking at the time, you know, a conversation that I had with a priest many, many years back when I was 8 years old. I used to be an altar boy. And at the age of 5, I'd served my very first funeral. And everything's got a reason. When people say, well, what would you say to your younger self when you was 15, 10, whatever? I always say, you know what, it all makes sense. It all makes sense. And at the age of 5, I served my very first funeral. And up until the age of 18, I think I served about 3,000 funerals. So wow. I was an expert on grief. You know, I was really understanding about grief and death. And I was quite comfortable around the whole subject. But at 8 years old, something crazy happened. And I'd sit with adults who were grieving in the morning, and they just pull the heart out. I was 8 years old. I looked like a milky bar kid. I had no life experience. I couldn't give them advice or anything like that. But what I could do was listen. And all I kept on hearing was, I wish I, or I wish they. I wish I wouldn't have had that argument. I wish they would have lived the life they wanted to live. I wish they would have just done what they needed to do. And that terrified me. The whole concept of this regret just terrified me. And I asked the priest, you know, how do I live a life with no regret? And, you know, 8 years old, that's just a crazy question to ask. But that was my world. And so the priest turned around and said, Dave, in order to live a life with no regret, you need to make peace with your decisions, both good and bad, immediately. And I remember walking out of church at 8 years old, and I must have looked psychotic because I was shaking my hands and shaking my head and saying, no regret, no regret, no regret. And to this day, I sit here 100% with no regret in my life. And on that bed, on that hospital bed, I remember thinking about that conversation and thinking, I set out to do what I needed to do, and I succeeded. My role wasn't to then take that forward. My role was to get it up and running and pass it over. I didn't have the skill set to keep it running. I didn't have that passion to keep it running because there was more people more qualified than me to do that. And immediately this relief came away from me, and I thought, you know what? Yeah, I've made peace with that. I'm not going to let that really mold me in a negative, bitter way. And from that point, I've dedicated the last 30 years now to volunteering, to doing stuff around mental health. And it's what drives me. But the biggest part is growing up in a place like Salford, where Salford Quays grew into this massive, massive behemoth from Salford docks. Thousands of unskilled workers were left on the heap, and they was just left to fend for themselves. And one of my biggest drivers is, you know, and I'm sure you've heard this in conversations we've had in the past about my charging strategy. You know, it's driven from the condition I had where I saw people who didn't have much get pushed to the side, and the people who had was able to get the best level of support. And so I've created a strategy around my pricing now where it allows people to get the best level of mental health support, but still allows me to pay my bills. And it just feels right, and it feels good to be able to give back to so many and still be able to buy Heinz baked beans rather than Lidl.
And you know what? And this is what makes me so passionate about speaking to people today. You know, I've just literally wrote down, and I was trying to do it, you know, while I was looking at you, how do I live a life of no regret? And I think that is what we're going to call this podcast, because it just sums up everything about you. Now, there could be people in your shoes. You've got some real health challenges. which I'm sure you will go into in as much detail or not as much detail as you wish. But there will be people sat there thinking, why me? What did I do to deserve this? My life's done in, all those kinds of things. And I've never, ever once heard you complain or, you've always used it as a bit of a, okay, so you're going to throw this at me? Well, I'll do this. And
Yeah.
that's it's been inspirational. And I don't use that word a lot at all. But it really motivates me as somebody who, okay, I've got a couple of health challenges, nothing major, but, what can I moan about when I look at, there are people out there that have got a much more difficult time than me. So I just take my hat off to you, David. You are phenomenal. You are brilliant. What are we up against at the moment? What are you up against at the moment? Because I know you've had some challenging times.
Yeah.
How is things with you?
Well, the interesting thing is, I always think when something crazy happens, something adverse or whatever, it was Jim Rohn who says after every recession is growth, after the darkest hour, glorious sunrise. It's a law. So I've got myself into a situation now where I'm switching it around when thinking, right, what's on the other side of this? What do I need to do to get to the other side, to see that glory, to see that sunrise, to see that growth? And so I look at it as a game now. If something really depressing is happening to me, I turn it around into a game. So, okay, so I know that this is a test to see how much I want it. And I just do what is within my control. I look for the positives, I look for the learning curve. And I find ultimately that sunrise, which, keeps me going. Everybody needs hope, you know what I mean? But we're too programmed to look at the negatives all the time. I did a lot of work in schools. Back in the early 90s, I was integrating SEN kids into mainstream schools. And I was training the teachers to be able to understand and help these kids sort of integrate into the school system. And all we kept on talking about to get the funding was what they couldn't do. And that really was a source of frustration because there was so many things that these kids could do. And we didn't celebrate that. We didn't push that. But to get this funding, we really needed to focus on the negatives, which was really upsetting. Now you seem to have frozen there. Can you still hear me? Can you still hear me?
I can hear you now.
Oh.
We lost you for a second there. There you go. This is the joys of filming it live, isn't it?
So basically, the challenge that I've had over the last few years, about 6-7 years ago, I started getting breathless, and it got to the point where I couldn't even ride a bike downhill without getting breathless. That's how bad it was. And the doctors were saying that I had asthma, and some were saying I didn't. So eventually I got a test for COPD. And now I knew I didn't have COPD because I've never smoked, I've never been near asbestos or anything like that. But what it did rule was asthma. And so they sent me to the lung clinic in Wythenshawe in Manchester. And the lung consultant said, oh yeah, you've got a paralysed diaphragm. And at the time I had 42% vital lung capacity. But he said, you don't believe it's a standalone thing. We believe it's something driven muscular. And so they sent me to the neurologist, and ultimately the neurologist turned around and said, I've got a rare form of motor neuron disease. So within the space of several months, I'd gone from having asthma to having motor neuron disease to having a paralysed diaphragm and 42% vital lung capacity. Since then, I've been diagnosed with severe spinal canal stenosis, which is the narrowing of the arteries of the spinal cord. And basically, ultimately, they said that the prognosis would be paralysis. Now, just before the pandemic, I went to a spinal consultant, and it was a private consultant. The NHS didn't have capacity. So they sent me to this private consultant, and the option on the table was surgery for my back. And I said to him, just give it me straight. So I work in mental health. I've got strategies, I can cope. I don't like people pussyfooting around. And his words to me, and I quote, if you was to go down the surgical route, which is the only option available to yourself, you may as well book into Dignitas, because at least then you'll have a nice holiday to Switzerland beforehand. So basically what he was saying was, if you go to surgery, you will die on that operating table. Now, my instant reaction to that was not one of anger or bitterness or hatred. It was one of gratitude. And I shook him by the hand and said, genuinely, thank you. And he couldn't understand why I was so calm about it. And I said to him, so let me explain. He said, if you would have said there was a 40% chance of dying or 50% chance, that may well have been playing heavy on my mind, which then would have taken my focus away from my family. And they are what is the most important thing in my life, being a role model to my kids and being a good husband to my wife. So the fact that you've taken that decision out of my hands, I don't need to think about it now. It's out of my control. So I don't mess about with stuff that's out of my control. I only control what's controllable. And what is controllable is being the best role model to my kids and to my wife, to be a good husband to my wife. So why would I not be grateful? And he just shook his head and said, I've never had anything like that. Now, the thing is, if I fall down the stairs, which I did a few months back, and I fell off a Segway last week as well and damaged my shoulder and my neck, which is stupid because I've got a bad back. I shouldn't really be doing these things, but my boy wanted to do it. So I still feel I'm 20 years old. I'll do it. If I broke my leg and I have to go under general anesthetic, I am facing death. It's as simple as that. So I could quite easily be forgiven for just shying away and just slouching on the couch and not doing anything. But since then, I've done a virtual Mount Everest challenge, 42 miles, and I'm just very close to the end of a Great Wall of China virtual walk, which is 161 miles. And it was Carl Ford, actually, who asked me, why? I said, why are you doing this when you could, you're going to end up paralyzed? I said, because it's being driven by this no regret. I don't want to be sat in that wheelchair thinking, shit, I wish I would have done that. I'm still capable of pushing myself. Yes, I'm in agony, I'm in pain, but I'm still capable of pushing myself. Whilst my legs are still working, I'm going to do what I need to do. So I can sit back when the inevitable happens, if it happens, and say, well, at least I know I did that. I've got nothing left to worry about or regret. And that's why I do it. And I've set up this wonderful thing with Richard Wilkes as well, where, that's going to test my
endurance.
mindset. It's going to test my resilience and my physicalities to the limits. But I'm not going out of this world with my last words saying, I wish. It's not happening. So, and the good thing is now is kids do what we do, not what we say. And, my youngest son has got the empathy matched by very few. And that's all I can do as a parent is just try and inspire them to be as independent and be as empathetic and be as decent as they can be. And the rest will look after itself. But if I just say one thing and do another, they're not going to do what I do.
These lessons that you give your children, those around you, the corporate companies that you've stood on stage and talked to, they're so important, and yet they are lost in everyday translation, aren't they? They're just, it's one of those things, I'll do it tomorrow. And like you say, you end up with regrets because tomorrow never comes. Something happens, work takes over, family life takes over. We can all be really, really guilty of it. This challenge that you're doing with Rich, then tell us more about that. What's that going to involve? Because that sounds tough. I mean, it sounds tough to me, let alone, you and your health at the moment.
It sounds good to me at the moment, but come May, when we start doing it, I'll be probably cursing myself. But it all was born, many years ago, when I was 22. I was getting claustrophobic because I was homeless for 2 years. I was getting claustrophobic with the four walls around me and normality was seeping in, and I needed that freedom. I needed to escape. So I bought a tent and I went to the Lake District thinking, if I'm going to be homeless, I might as well be homeless somewhere beautiful. Now, what happened there was I got friendly with a local farmer and he gave me a little corner plot of his field and he said, whatever you catch is yours. And he taught me how to catch wildlife and what berries I could eat and what leaves and all that sort of stuff. And for pretty much a whole year, I lived in this tent in the Lake District, just living off the land with the odd bacon butty from the farmer. Well, more than the odd bacon butty from the farmer. And it was just beautiful because I just had the freedom to walk for miles and miles and miles and just forget myself. And the one thing I remember thinking was when I was sat, the first few days was terrifying when you hear the wildlife in the forest, in the woods, shit yourself. But after a couple of days, you start getting used to it and it becomes normal again. And I remember thinking, well, just sat by the fire, just looking up at that night sky with no light pollution whatsoever, thinking, you know what, how insignificant are we in the grand scheme of things? This is a huge universe. There's galaxies within galaxies within galaxies. It's just vast. And we are just a micro dot in the grand scheme of things. And it got me thinking, all we can do is just impact on those around us. Everybody wants to change the world, but the only best way to change the world is by changing each individual life one by one, just by small gestures, by smiling, by waving, by allowing people out at junctions or whatever. And that's the way to change the world, because when I'm going out of a junction, if I let somebody out and wave, I guarantee if I was to follow that car, the next junction, they'll stop and let somebody out and wave. And before you know it, that day, that 24-hour period, you probably inspired and helped at least 100, 150 people, yet you only know about 2. I don't really care about knowing about the other 148 because I know it's happened, and that's enough for me. I don't need to know about all that sort of stuff because I know the law is it will have that ripple effect. And so this Time to Breathe events that we're doing with Rich was born out of that. And it started off as a weekend wild camping retreat. But we decided to slim it right down and just build really strong foundations by going out on days, going out to Dovedale Valley and all these different beautiful areas that are just so overlooked. You know, people don't realize it's on your doorstep. It's an hour away from me. Yeah, I've not been there for years. You know what I mean? Because life just takes over. And it's just getting people away from all the distractions, away from mobile signals, away from laptops, away from all the struggles. And they soon realize once they're out in nature, once they're pushing themselves, there's so many metaphors in life that they can really take hold of and really be inspired by. And I guarantee at the end of it, when they realize, oh my God, I didn't think I could actually walk that 12 miles up that 2,000 meter hill, or 2,000 feet hill. I've done it. Well, what else can you achieve? What's the next thing? What's the next thing? And slowly but surely, normal life goes out the window. And you start getting a new perspective. Tolerance levels go through another level. You know what I mean? And you start thinking, you know what? I used to stress about that. I don't need to stress about that. There's something scientifically proven by just being out in nature. It is the biggest antidepressant you could ever get. And so we're really keen to explore the link between physical and mental health and pushing people and challenging people and getting them out of the comfort zone, because we all hear that the glory is outside of the comfort zone. You know what I mean? I remember just before I was diagnosed with everything and I was really breathless, I went up Helvellyn and Striding Edge, and doing the last scramble at the top, I could hear myself saying to my friend Paul, I need to go back, and I kept on trying to convince my wife that it was her who needed to go back, because I'm a man, I don't really want to admit that I'm the one who's going back. And when I got to the top, I thought, imagine if I would have just left 3/4 of the way. And it was something Paul said to me, he said, you can go back, but it's a lot further going back than it is going to the top. So which do you want? You know, both is going to be painful. Which pain do you want?
Yeah.
The pain that's going to get you to the summit and give you that amazing feeling, or the pain of going back with all that regret. And that was enough for me to just get that extra push to get to the summit. And once I got to the top and I was like looking around me, looking at beautiful views of the Lake District, yeah, what else can I achieve?
Well worth it. Well worth it. You're just incredible. All these things that you've done, we could literally talk all day, but one of the questions that I always ask people, obviously the name is the Business Success Podcast. I have to ask you, and I'm really interested to hear this one, because this is a question I ask everyone. Everybody's answer is different. There is no right and wrong. Some people look at it very logically. Some people look at it, it's very personal to them. What is business success to you?
That's a great question. Business success to me is the fact that I'm doing what I love every single day, knowing that an impact has been made, a positive impact has been made, you know, and I don't need to be a millionaire, you know, to feel that I've succeeded. I don't need to have the big office block, just so that I've succeeded. Just seeing people that I've helped have that relationship back with the family is enough. Having that relationship back with themselves is enough. You know what I mean? This is not a business to me. This is life. This is a mission. And so, yeah, I'll still be doing this, even if I've got no. Well, I was doing it when I was homeless. You know what I mean? So I don't need anything materialistic to show and prove that I'm successful in business. I feel already I'm a success in business because I'm doing what I love every single day.
Do you know, I said to you before I asked you that, I ask this question all the time. Everybody answers differently. I've never, ever had one guest that has said to me, it's about the money. It's about, I want to get to this level. I want to earn this much. It's never about that. Never. You have been incredible. And like I said, I could talk to you for hours and hours, but we haven't got hours and hours. And by now, the listeners probably want me to shut up and just let you talk. So where can people find you? Where can they find out more about what you do and the services that you offer? Because you offer some incredible services to help people.
They can find me on LinkedIn, which is under Dave Heffernan Speaker, or my website is daveheffernan.com. They're probably the two best places. There's a contact form on there that you can fill in, or just hunt me down on Facebook.
There you go. Hunt him down on Facebook. LinkedIn profile there, speaker, because you are an incredible speaker as well, and we haven't even touched on that yet. Dave, it's been an absolute pleasure to chat to you today. That's it now. My you fed my soul. You have absolutely given me life for the next. We're doing a podcast day today, so I'm filming a lot today, and you've just spurred me on. So thank you so much for being a guest. David, as I said, is one of our Business Success Network experts. So if you are not in our Facebook community, head over to Business Success Network UK. He is in there. He's always around. You can tag him in. You can ask him questions. Like I said, he's an expert for a reason. So thank you so much, David. And I hope you have a wonderful 2022.
Thank you very much, and you too. Take care.